She accepts a marriage out of necessity, without imagining what she will find. The man everyone fears reveals himself to be distant, cold, and impossible to decipher. But little by little, silent actions begin to contradict his reputation, and what seemed like an agreement transforms into something nobody expected. If you like love stories and romance, watch until the end and you won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comment saying where you are listening to this beautiful story from. We continue. Marina held the pen with trembling fingers, observing the marriage contract on the mahogany table. 3 months ago, she had a simple life in Osasco, working 2 jobs and taking care of her younger sister. Now, after her mother's death and the illness that began to consume Julia, her 17-year-old sister Marina had no more choices. She had only this pen and a man on the other side of the table whom everyone in São Paulo knew by name, but few dared to pronounce without lowering their voices. Rafael Albuquerque Brandão, 42 years old, a criminal lawyer whose reputation moved through the corridors of the courthouse like a sharp blade. They said he never lost a case. That powerful businessman trembled before him, that he was cold as ice and incapable of any affection. And now, for reasons Marina did not understand, he was offering her a way out. The marriage would be discreet. She would have the resources to take care of Julia and ensure proper treatment. In exchange, she would become Rafael Brandão's wife, live in the mansion in Jardim Europa, and fulfill the necessary social obligations. There were no promises of love, only a clear and pragmatic agreement. Marina signed. The wedding took place 2 weeks later, in a tense ceremony at the registry office. No one celebrated. Rafael merely nodded and indicated the car that was waiting for them. The mansion in Jardim Europa was imposing. 3 floors of classical architecture, perfectly manicured gardens, wrought iron gates. Inside, everything looked like it was out of a magazine: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, period furniture. But there was something disturbing about that perfection. The house was too silent. There was no laughter, no voices, only the echo of one's own steps. Rafael led her to the 2nd floor. "This will be your room," he said, his voice controlled. "Mine is on the floor above. You are free to use the entire house. The employee in charge is Dona Irene. She will guide you." Marina just nodded. He remained for a few seconds as if he were going to say something, but closed the door upon leaving. In the first few days, Marina hardly saw Rafael. He left early in the morning, always impeccable in tailored suits, and returned late when she had already retired. Sometimes she heard his footsteps on the floor above, the rustling of papers, phone calls that extended into the early morning. He was like a ghostly presence, always there but never truly present. The house was managed with precision by Dona Irene, a lady with grey hair pulled into a bun and an evaluative gaze. She was not rude to Marina, but she maintained a respectful distance that made it clear. She had worked for Rafael for over 20 years, and her loyalty was exclusively his. Besides her, there was São Carlos, the driver who spoke little and smiled less, and Beatrice, the young cleaning girl who looked away whenever Marina tried to talk. Everyone functioned in perfect synchrony, fulfilling their roles without question. Marina felt like an intruder in a mechanism that worked perfectly without her. There was something disturbing. Conversations interrupted when she passed by, glances exchanged between Dona Irene and Beatriz as if they shared secrets, and there was a room on the 1st floor near Rafael's office that remained always locked. No one mentioned that room, no one approached that door. In the first week, Marina observed and learned the routine. She had breakfast alone on the back porch, visited Julia at the hospital in the afternoon, and returned before nightfall. Rafael rarely had dinner at home, and when he did so in silence, leafing through documents while he ate. But on the 10th day, something changed. Marina was in the library leafing through a first edition of Machado de Assis when Rafael entered. He seemed surprised to find her there. For a moment, they stood looking at each other. His eyes were dark, almost black, with an intensity that made Marina feel as if he could read her every thought. "You like Machado," he said. "It's not what I imagined." Marina raised her chin. "And what did you imagine?" He shrugged. "Something lighter. People are rarely what we imagine, aren't they?" There was a silence. Rarely are, he agreed, sketching something that could be a smile. He remained for a few more minutes, asking casual questions about how she was adapting, if Julia was improving. His voice was different when he wasn't in professional mode, still controlled, but with an unexpected softness. In the following days, these encounters became frequent. Raphael would pass through the kitchen while she was having coffee, sit at the table during dinner, appear on the porch while she was reading. The conversations were brief, but something was changing in the way he looked at her. Marina began to observe him too. He never raised his voice, had a habit of running his hand through his hair when he thought, and drank coffee without sugar. There were marks of tension on his face. His shoulders carried an invisible weight. He wasn't cruel, he was just contained, as if he had built walls so high that even he no longer knew how to tear them down. And Marina, even knowing that this marriage was just an agreement, began to feel something dangerous, curiosity. She wanted to know who the man behind the reputation really was. One night, 3 weeks after the wedding, Marina went down to the kitchen looking for tea. Raphael appeared wearing only sweatpants and a t-shirt, with the most human appearance she had ever seen. Unshaven, deep, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like someone who hadn't slept for days. "Can't sleep either," he said. "The house is very silent at night," Marina replied. They sat at the table with tea between them, only the soft light over the sink illuminating the environment. "Do you regret it?" Raphael asked. "Having accepted?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "I didn't have many options, but Julia is going to live and you gave me that." "Your sister is responding well to the treatment," Raphael said. "I receive reports from the hospital." Marina blinked in surprise. "You follow up?" "That's part of the agreement," he said, looking away. But there was something in his voice that indicated it was more than that. "Thank you," Marina murmured, "for everything." "You don't need to thank me, it was a fair deal." But it didn't seem like just a deal at that moment, at 3 in the morning, sharing tea and silences that said more than words. Marina went to bed with something different in her chest, the feeling that perhaps that house could become something more than a golden prison. In the following days, Marina made small changes. She placed fresh flowers, opened the curtains, asked for brewed coffee. Donna Irene observed but did not undo anything. The whole house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Raphael noticed too. His eyes lingered on the sunlight. He inhaled deeply the scent of the coffee. There was a growing softness in his presence. On a rainy Thursday, Raphael sat in the library and asked, "Why do you read Machado de Assis?" "Because he wrote about real people," Marina replied. "People with flaws, contradictions, secrets. It helps me understand that everyone is trying to survive the best way they can." Raphael remained silent, processing. "That's a good reason," he said, smiling for the second time since they married. "And yours?" Marina dared to ask. "Why do you have all these books?" "They were my father's," he said. "He loved to read. He said books were the only thing you could trust because they didn't lie about what they were." There was old pain in that voice. "He must have been wise," Marina said. "It was complicated, but yes, in some aspects he was wise." Marina offered, "If you want, we can read together sometimes. You don't have to talk, just be here." Raphael looked at her for a long moment, as if a locked door were being unlocked. "I would like that." On that rainy afternoon, Marina and Raphael began to build something that neither of them had planned. It wasn't love yet, but it was the beginning of a bridge over the abyss that separated them. It was the promise that perhaps that marriage could become something more than an agreement. The truth about why Raphael had married her was revealing itself in fragments, but Marina still didn't know that this truth would change everything. The weeks brought a subtle change in the house's dynamics. Raphael began to arrive earlier, always with plausible excuses, a cancelled meeting, a postponed case, light traffic. But Marina noticed they were choices. He was choosing to be present. Nights in the library became routine. Raphael would arrive, loosen his tie, pour some whiskey and sit down. Sometimes they talked, other times they stayed in silence, and that was enough. Marina began to notice details about him, the way his shoulders relaxed upon entering the house, as if he were taking off an invisible load, the way he looked out the window, with deep exhaustion. The times he stopped in the middle of a sentence, about to reveal something, but pulled back. He lived in constant guard, Marina realized, And the more she observed him, the more she understood it wasn't coldness or arrogance. It was protection. It was fear disguised as control. One afternoon, Marina was organizing flower arrangements in the dining room when she heard raised voices coming from Raphael's office. The door was ajar, and although she had no intention of spying, the intensity of the discussion made her stop. "You're making a mistake, Raphael," a male voice, deep and harsh. "This woman is an opportunist, everyone knows it." "Watch what you say, Henrique." Raphael's voice was low, dangerously calm. "You are talking about my wife." "Wife on paper?" The man laughed without humor. "For God's sake, do you think I don't know how these things work? She saw an opportunity and grabbed it, and you, for some reason I can't understand, are letting her in." The silence that followed was tense. Marina held her breath, her heart racing. "This conversation is over," Raphael said, his voice still calm but loaded with something dangerous. "I suggest you leave before you say something you'll regret." Heavy footsteps crossed the office. The door opened completely, and a tall man with grey hair and an impeccable suit walked out like a storm. He stopped when he saw Marina standing in the hallway, and his eyes pierced her with a contempt so pure that she felt it like a physical slap. He said nothing. He just passed by her as if she were invisible and left the house, slamming the front door hard. Marina stood still holding the flower vase, feeling her hands tremble. She didn't know who that man was, but she knew she had just made an enemy without even having opened her mouth. Raphael appeared at the office door. His eyes met hers immediately. "You heard." It wasn't a question. Marina nodded, unable to lie. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration rare for him. "He was my partner," he said after a moment. "Henrique Castillo. We've worked together for 15 years. He doesn't approve of our marriage." Marina placed the vase on the sideboard carefully, trying to keep her hand steady. "And he's not the only one, I imagine." Raphael looked at her with that intensity she was beginning to recognize. "No," he admitted, "he's not. But his opinion doesn't matter." "It does matter," Marina said softly. "If he is your partner, if you've worked together for so long, of course it matters." He walked toward her, stopping at a distance that was too close to be casual, but not close enough to be intimate. "What matters, Marina, is that you are here because I chose for you to be here. And no one has the right to question the choices I make in my own life." There was something in his voice, a conviction so absolute that Marina felt something tighten in her chest. But there was also something that didn't fit. Why did he care so much? If this was just an agreement, why defend her presence so vehemently? "Why did you marry me, Raphael?" The question came out before she could censor it. "Really, don't tell me it was a convenient agreement. You could have resolved Julia's situation in other ways. You could have just paid the expenses, made a donation, anything. But you chose marriage. Why?" Raphael remained silent for so long that Marina thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said something she didn't expect. "Because I was tired of living alone." The words fell between them like stones in water, creating ripples that Marina didn't know how to navigate. She looked at him, really looked, and saw for the first time the man behind all the defenses. A lonely, tired man who had built a successful life, but forgotten to build a life worth living. Before either of them could say anything else, Donna Irene appeared in the hallway announcing that dinner was served. The moment broke, but something had changed between them. A truth had been told, and there was no way to ignore it. That night, for the first time since they married, Raphael and Marina dined together without uncomfortable silences. They talked about Julia, whose treatment was showing promising results. They spoke about the books they were reading, about the city, about nothing and everything at the same time. And when they said goodbye in the second-floor hallway, Raphael stood looking at her for an extra moment, as if he wanted to say something more. "Good night, Marina," he said finally. "Good night," she replied, and went to her room with her heart racing and her mind spinning. The following days brought more changes. Raphael began to include her in small decisions about the house. He asked her opinion on the menu, on changes in decoration, on social events they would have to attend. They were small things, but significant. He was making space for her not just as a temporary presence, but as an integral part of that life. Marina, for her part, began to get to know the people orbiting Raphael's world better. She discovered that Donna Irene was not as inflexible as she seemed. She simply protected Raphael with a fierce loyalty because she knew secrets that no one else knew. So Carlos, the driver, had a dry sense of humor that appeared when he felt comfortable. And Beatrice, the young cleaning girl, was saving money to go to nursing school and saw in Marina someone she could trust. But not everything was rosy. Marina began to notice tensions coming from outside the house. When she accompanied Raphael to social events, charity dinners, inaugurations, parties of São Paulo's high society, she felt the stares, the elegant women who evaluated her from head to toe, calculating every detail of her dress, her borrowed jewelry, her behavior. The men who looked at Raphael with a mixture of respect and something darker, something that seemed like fear. On a particularly tense night, at a dinner at a judge's house in Higienopolis, Marina saw Raphael in action for the first time. A well-known prosecutor began to make insinuations about a recent case, trying to provoke Raphael. The conversation started civilized, but Marina saw the tension growing in Raphael's jaw, the way his fingers tightened slightly on his wine glass. Then, with a calmness that was scarier than any shout, Raphael dismantled the prosecutor's arguments one by one, with a surgical precision that left the man groundless. There was no rudeness, no aggressiveness, just facts presented with a brutal clarity, an implacable logic that left no room for counter-argument. The prosecutor turned red, muttered an excuse, and walked away. Marina saw the rest of the table observing Raphael with that mixture of admiration and caution. That was it, she realized. That was how he had built his reputation, not with threats or direct intimidation, but with an intelligence so sharp that it transformed every confrontation into a guaranteed victory. In the car returning home, Raphael was tense. "Sorry about that," he said. "Sometimes I forget that not everyone is used to you dismantling people in public," Marina completed, but there was a touch of humor in her voice. "You don't need to apologize. He was being arrogant. You just showed him why that isn't a good idea." Raphael looked at her in surprise. "It didn't bother you?" "It would bother me if you were being cruel for pleasure," Marina said. "But that wasn't it. You were defending yourself. It's different." Something changed in his expression. The tension in his shoulders relaxed a bit. "You understand me in a way that most people don't," he said quietly. Marina felt her heart accelerate. "Maybe because I also know what it's like to have to fight to survive," she replied. "Our battlefields are different, but the fight is the same." The silence that followed was loaded with something new. Raphael reached out his hand and for the first time touched hers deliberately. It wasn't an accidental touch. It wasn't protocol. It was a choice. His fingers were warm, firm, and Marina felt an electric shock run up her arm. "Thank you," he said, and there was so much sincerity in those two words that Marina felt her eyes sting. When they arrived home that night, neither of them went straight to their room. They stayed in the library, sitting closer than before, sharing a silence that was now loaded with possibilities. Raphael told stories about his father, about how he had learned to be a lawyer by watching him work, about the principles he had inherited and those he had chosen for himself. Marina, in turn, spoke about her mother, about how she had been raised with little but with much love, about the promise she had made to take care of Julia no matter what happened. She spoke about her fears, about the feeling of always being one step away from disaster, about how difficult it was to accept help when she had spent her whole life being the strong person. It was the most intimate conversation they had had until then. There were no more formalities, no more masks. They were just two people, recognizing in each other something that few could see, survivors. When Marina finally went up to her room that night, it was past 2 in the morning. Raphael accompanied her to the door, and for a moment they stood in the hallway, very close to each other. Marina could feel the heat emanating from him, the smell of his cologne mixed with something more essential, more him. "Marina," Raphael said softly, his voice husky, I thank you for listening to me." "Always," she replied, and she knew she was promising more than just listening. He raised his hand as if he were going to touch her face, but stopped in the middle of the movement, his hand suspended in the air between them. Marina saw the struggle in his eyes, desire fighting control, need fighting fear. Then he lowered his hand. "Good night," he said, and there was frustration and resignation in his voice. "Good night," Marina replied, and entered her room with her heart beating so hard she thought he could hear it through the door. Lying in bed, looking at the ceiling in the dark, Marina realized she was in danger. The agreement she had made, the marriage of convenience, the cold and pragmatic transaction, all of it was transforming into something she hadn't planned, something she didn't know how to control. She was falling in love with Rafael Albuquerque Brandão, and that was the most dangerous thing she could do, because the closer they got, the more she realized there were secrets in that house, secrets that Dona Irene kept with fierce loyalty, secrets that made people like Henrique Castillo look at her with suspicion and anger, secrets that explained why Rafael lived surrounded by invisible walls. And Marina had the feeling that when these secrets finally came to light, everything she was beginning to build with Rafael could crumble like a house of cards. But for now, on that night, she just allowed herself to feel the hope growing in her chest, to feel the possibility that maybe, just maybe, that marriage could become real. What Marina didn't know was that the storm was approaching, and when it arrived, it would test not only what she felt for Rafael, but who she really was. The change happened gradually. Rafael began to seek Marina out during the day as well. He would appear in the kitchen, sit while she answered emails, finding excuses to be present. Marina, previously a temporary guest, began to feel like the owner of the space. She reorganized the living room, brought in colorful pillows, chose orchids at the flower shop. She convinced Dona Irene to prepare recipes her mother used to make, filling the house with the aromas of a home. Rafael never commented on these changes directly, but Marina saw approval in his eyes. She saw it in the way he lingered in the transformed rooms, how he breathed deeply when the smell of cake filled the kitchen, how his lips almost curved into a smile upon finding new flower arrangements. One morning, Marina went down early and found Rafael in the kitchen, already dressed for work but without a tie. He was making coffee, and there was a second cup on the counter. "I thought maybe you'd like to have coffee with me before I leave," he said without looking, as if the confession were too much vulnerability. "I do." Marina felt something warm spread through her chest. They had coffee as the sun rose over São Paulo. Rafael told her about a complicated case. Marina shared news about Julia, who was responding well to the treatment. "She's going to be fine," Rafael said with certainty. "And you made that happen." "We did," Marina corrected. "You made it possible." He looked at her with absolute intensity. "We are a good team." "We are," she agreed. The phone rang. Rafael's expression changed instantly. The relaxed man disappeared, replaced by the feared lawyer. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, and hung up. He looked at Marina with frustration. "Sorry. Emergency." "Go, I understand," Marina said, feeling disappointment. He hesitated, then did something unexpected. He kissed the top of her head, a gesture so quick that Marina almost thought she had imagined it. "Have dinner with me today. I'll try to leave earlier." "I'll be here," Marina smiled, and she was. She prepared everything with care, asking Dona Irene to prepare a special dinner, choosing candles for the table, wearing a simple but beautiful dress she had bought on one of her rare trips to the mall. It was no longer an agreement. It was no longer just cohabitation. It was a date, and they both knew it. Rafael arrived at 8, with a bouquet of white lilies, her favorite flowers, something she had casually mentioned weeks ago and he had remembered. The dinner was perfect. They talked, laughed, shared stories and comfortable silences. And when they finished, instead of parting as they always did, they went to the library together. But this time, Rafael didn't sit in his usual armchair. He sat beside her on the sofa, so close that Marina could feel the heat of his body, the smell of his cologne mixed with something more essential. They stayed like that for a while, just close, until Rafael finally took her hand. "Marina," he said, his voice low and husky, "this thing that's happening between us—" "I know," she interrupted softly. "I feel it too." He turned to face her completely, his dark eyes fixed on hers. "When we married, I was sure I could maintain distance, that it would be just a practical agreement. But you changed everything. You changed this house. You changed how I feel when I wake up in the morning. You changed me." The words came out like a confession torn from a deep place. Marina felt her eyes sting. "Raphael, Let me finish," he asked. "I need to say this. I'm not an easy man, Marina. I have enemies. I have secrets. I have parts of my life that are complicated. And if we continue on this path, you're going to get involved in things you might not want to. So I need to ask you, are you sure? Sure that you want this? Because if it's just for the agreement, if it's just out of gratitude—" Marina placed her free hand on his face, feeling the rough stubble against her palm. "It isn't gratitude," she said firmly, "and I don't care about complications. I choose you, Raphael. Not the agreement, not the security. You." For a moment he just looked at her, as if he were memorizing every detail of her face. Then, slowly, he leaned in and touched his lips to hers. It was a soft kiss, almost reverent, as if she were something too precious to be held tightly. But when Marina responded, deepening the contact, something broke between them. The kiss intensified, loaded with weeks of tension, of nights of contained desire, of a longing that both had tried to deny. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. Raphael rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that," he murmured. Marina smiled. "I think I have an idea." They spent the rest of the night on the sofa, intertwined, talking about everything and nothing, kissing between words, discovering the simple pleasure of just being with each other without barriers. When Marina finally went up to her room, it was past 4 in the morning, and Raphael accompanied her to the door as he always did. But this time, when they said goodbye, it was with another kiss, long and deep. "Good night, Marina," he murmured against her lips. "Good night," she replied, and entered her room floating. The following days were like living in a dream. Raphael cancelled meetings to have lunch with her at home. They arrived together at social events holding hands, no longer hiding the true nature of their relationship. Marina slept in his arms on nights when they talked until too late and simply fell asleep together on the library sofa. It was perfect. It was real. It was everything Marina didn't know she wanted. But it was precisely at this moment of happiness that the cracks began to appear. First, it was subtle. Donna Irene, who had begun to warm up to Marina, became distant again. There was worry in her eyes when she looked at the two of them together, as if she was seeing something Marina couldn't see. Beatrice, who always had a smile for Marina, began to avoid her, looking away when they crossed paths in the hallways. Then came the strange calls. Marina would answer the phone and hear only silence on the other end, before the line went dead. It happened once, then twice, then so many times that Raphael ordered an investigation. Nothing was found. And then one afternoon Marina found a letter. It was on the hall table with no sender, just her name written in elegant handwriting. Inside, a single sentence. "You should know the truth about why he married you." Marina stood still, holding the paper with trembling hands. Her heart raced. What did that mean? What truth? Raphael had said he married because he was tired of living alone, but could that be the whole story? She kept the letter, deciding not to mention it to Raphael immediately. Maybe it was just someone trying to cause trouble. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The next night, during a charity dinner at Clube Harmonia, Marina saw Raphael talking to Henrique Castillo, his partner. The two were away from the rest of the event, on a balcony, and their expressions were serious. Marina couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw the tension in Raphael's posture, the way Henrique gestured with frustration. Then Henrique looked directly at Marina through the glass, and his eyes had an expression she couldn't decipher. It was no longer simple contempt. It was something more complex. It was pity? Marina felt a chill run down her spine. When Raphael returned, he was visibly tense. She touched his arm. "Is everything okay?" He forced a smile. "Just work, nothing to worry about." But Marina knew it was a lie. She knew Raphael well enough now to know when he was hiding something. And for the first time since they had become close, she felt a barrier between them again. The days that followed were marked by small strangenesses. Raphael spent more time in the office, returning home with a tired and worried expression. When Marina asked, he said it was just work pressure, but she felt there was more. And then one morning, Marina found Donna Irene crying silently in the kitchen. The woman wiped her eyes quickly upon seeing her, but not before Marina noticed. "Donna Irene, what happened?" The woman shook her head. "It's nothing, ma'am, just a silliness of mine." Marina sat at the table, inviting Donna Irene to do the same. The woman hesitated, but finally sat down. "Please," Marina said softly, "if there is something wrong, I would like to know." Donna Irene looked at her with tearful eyes. "I don't want you to get hurt," she said finally. "Mr. Raphael, he is a good man, but sometimes the things we do for protection end up causing more pain." Marina felt her stomach tighten. "What are you talking about?" Before Donna Irene could answer, the kitchen door opened and Raphael entered. He looked from one to the other, immediately noticing the tension. "Donna Irene, can you give us a moment?" The woman rose quickly and left, leaving Raphael and Marina alone. He walked toward her, but Marina stood up, creating distance between them. "What is happening, Raphael?" she asked, her voice firmer than she felt. "What truth does everyone seem to know except me?" Raphael closed his eyes as if gathering courage. When he opened them again, there was pain in them. "Marina, I never wanted you to find out like this." "Find out what?" He took a deep breath. "The marriage wasn't just because I was tired of living alone. There were other reasons. Reasons I should have told you from the beginning, but I was afraid you would walk away if you knew." Marina felt the floor sway under her feet. "What reasons?" Raphael ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she recognized. "My father, before he died, he made some very powerful enemies, people who wanted to destroy everything he built. When I inherited the family business, I also inherited those conflicts, and one of the ways they found to attack me was through my personal life. They discovered I had weak points, people I cared about." Marina felt nausea rising. "Continue." "My lawyer suggested that if I married, it would create an image of stability that would make certain types of attacks harder. A marriage of convenience would be expected in our circles. But I didn't want to marry anyone from that environment, someone involved in those power disputes. I wanted someone from the outside, someone real." "So you chose me," Marina said, and her voice came out icy, like a piece on a board. "No." Raphael took a step toward her, but stopped when he saw Marina recoil. "It wasn't like that. When I heard about your situation, when I saw you were desperate to save your sister, I thought it could be a solution for both of us. But it wasn't a cold strategy, Marina. I chose you because I saw in you something I recognized: strength, courage, survival." "But you didn't tell me the truth." Marina felt tears burning her eyes, though she refused to let them fall. "You let me think it was one thing when it was something completely different." "I know," Raphael said, and there was desperation in his voice. "And I regret it. I regret not being honest from the beginning. But Marina, everything that happened between us afterward, that was real. Every moment, every word, every feeling. That wasn't part of any plan." Marina looked at the man she had learned to love and felt her heart break. "How can I trust that? How do I know it wasn't just you being convincing?" "Because you know me," Raphael said, taking another step. "You know who I am, Marina. You know when I'm lying and when I'm telling the truth. Look at me and tell me you don't feel what is between us." Marina looked, and she saw everything that was between them. The nights in the library, the mornings having coffee together, the stolen kisses and whispered confessions. She saw all that, but she also saw the original lie, the omission that had stained everything from the start. "I need time," she said finally, her voice broken. "I need to think." "As much time as you need," Raphael said. "But please don't give up on us. Don't give up on what we built." Marina didn't answer. She just left the kitchen, went up the stairs and into her room, closing the door and finally letting the tears fall. She had fallen in love with Raphael, believing she was building something real on an honest foundation, even if it was pragmatic. Now she discovered the foundation had been cracked from the start, and she didn't know if what they had built on top was strong enough to survive this truth. That night, for the first time in weeks, Marina and Raphael slept in separate rooms, and the house, which had become alive and warm with the presence of the two together, returned to being silent and cold. The storm had arrived, and Marina didn't know if she could survive it. The days that followed were the most difficult Marina had faced since she married. She and Raphael existed in the same house like ghosts, crossing paths in the hallways, but never really meeting. He respected the space she had requested, but Marina saw the pain in his eyes every time their gazes accidentally met. Marina spent the days in a state of emotional confusion. Part of her wanted to run back into Raphael's arms, to believe that the love that had grown between them was stronger than any initial lie. But another part, the part that had been betrayed and deceived so many times in life, whispered that she was just a convenient piece, a solution to a problem she didn't even fully understand. Julia, who was now receiving regular visits from Marina, noticed the change. "What happened?" she asked one day, holding her older sister's hand. "You look so sad." Marina forced a smile. "It's complicated." "Is it, Raphael?" Julia asked with the wisdom that sick children develop too early. "Did you two fight?" Marina didn't know how to explain to her 17-year-old sister that she had fallen in love with the man who married her for convenience, only to discover there were layers of manipulation she hadn't even imagined. So she just said, "We are going through a difficult time." Julia squeezed her hand. "He loves you, Mari. I see it every time he comes to visit me." Marina blinked in surprise. "Raphael came to visit you?" "Every week," Julia confirmed. "He never told you. He always comes at the end of Wednesday afternoon, brings books, talks to me, asks how I'm feeling, how the treatment is going. He cares, Mari, about you and about me." Marina felt something tighten in her chest. Raphael had never mentioned these visits. It was something he did silently, without expecting recognition, without using it as a bargaining chip. It was genuine. But still the doubt persisted. A good deed didn't erase a lie, or did it? When she returned home that afternoon, Marina found Donna Irene waiting in the living room. The woman seemed to have something to say, but was struggling with herself. Finally, she broke the silence. "Can I speak with you, Ma'am?" Marina nodded, sitting on the sofa. Donna Irene remained standing, her hands clasped in front of her body. "What you saw a few days ago in the kitchen, I need you to understand it wasn't Mr. Raphael's fault." Marina made a gesture for her to continue. "I've worked for the Brandon family for over 20 years, Donna Irene began. "I knew Raphael's father, Dom Augusto. He was a brilliant man, but he was also relentless. He made powerful enemies throughout his life because he never bowed to pressure, never accepted corruption, never allowed them to intimidate him. And when he died, he left Raphael facing consequences of battles he didn't even choose to fight." Marina listened in silence, feeling a realization beginning to form. "There were attempts to destroy everything," Donna Irene continued, her voice thick with emotion. "They tried to stain the family reputation, they tried fraudulent lawsuits, they even tried worse things. Raphael fought all that alone. Alone, do you understand? No family, no support. Just him and his conviction that what his father stood for was worth protecting." "Why are you telling me this?" Marina asked softly. "Because you need to understand that when Raphael married you, it wasn't coldness or manipulation. It was desperation." Donna Irene finally looked directly at Marina. There were real threats against him. People who were looking for any weakness to exploit. And Raphael, he was afraid that anyone who got close to him would be used against him. That's why he lived alone for so long. "So why risk marrying me?" Marina asked, her emotions swirling. "Because he couldn't stand the loneliness anymore," Donna Irene said simply. "And when he saw the opportunity to help someone who needed it, to do something good in the middle of all this invisible war, he grabbed it. Yes, there were practical reasons. But do you think any practical reason would have made him look at you the way he looks at you? That would make him worry so much about your happiness? That would make him completely change this house just to see you smile?" Marina felt the tears begin to flow. "I don't know what to believe." "Believe in what you saw," Donna Irene said. "Believe in the man who has coffee with you every morning, in the man who visits your sister without anyone knowing, in the man who transformed a dead house into a living home just because you were in it." Donna Irene paused. He made a mistake by not telling the whole truth, but his feelings, those were never a lie. After Donna Irene left, Marina sat in the room for hours, processing everything. The anger she felt was beginning to give way to something more complex: understanding. Raphael had grown up in a world of threats and manipulations where trusting someone could mean giving them a weapon against you. Of course he had been cautious. Of course he had kept secrets. But that didn't make the pain smaller. It didn't make the betrayal easier to swallow. That night, Raphael knocked on her bedroom door for the first time since the revelation. "Marina, can I come in?" She opened the door. He had the most disheveled appearance she had ever seen. Unshaven, wrinkled shirt, deep, dark circles. He looked like someone who hadn't slept for days. "I need to show you something," he said. "You said you needed time, and I respect that. But there are things you need to know before you make any decision." Marina hesitated, but finally nodded. He led her to the first floor, to that room that had always remained locked. For the first time, he unlocked the door and opened it. Inside was an office, but not like the others in the house. The walls were covered with corkboards full of documents, photographs, newspaper clippings. It was like an investigation room. Marina approached slowly, examining the contents. There were photos of men in expensive suits, legal documents marked with red pen, handwritten notes in a handwriting she recognized as Raphael's. And in the center of it all, a photo of an older man who looked so much like Raphael that it could only be his father. "This is everything I have on the people who tried to destroy my family," Raphael said behind her. "Every fraudulent lawsuit, every extortion attempt, every threat. I've been documenting everything for years." Marina looked at him. "Why?" "Because eventually I'm going to need to fight back," he said, his voice tired. "And when I do, I need to have proof of everything. My father taught me that. Never enter a battle without having documented every move of the enemy." "Who are these people?" Raphael pointed to some of the photos. "Augusto Ferreira, construction businessman. Roberto Mendes, a politician with connections in Brasilia. Leonardo Costa, owner of a hotel chain. And," he hesitated, pointing to another photo, "Henrique Castillo." Marina felt the floor sway. "Your partner?" "My ex-partner," Raphael corrected bitterly. "He was working with them the whole time. I found out 2 weeks ago. That's why the arguments, the tension. He wanted me to undo our marriage, to send you away. He said you were a weak point. When I refused, he revealed his true loyalty." Marina looked at Henrique's photo with new eyes. "That's why he looked at me with so much hatred." "He saw you as an obstacle to their plans," Raphael confirmed. "And Marina, when they discover that what is between us is real, not just a paper marriage, they are going to use that. They will try to hit you, to hit me." Marina felt a cold fear run down her spine. "So I was right, I was a piece in a game." "No," Raphael said firmly, turning her to face him. "You were never a piece. Yes, initially there were practical reasons. Yes, I thought a marriage would create a layer of protection. But Marina, from the moment you entered this house, nothing else was strategy. Every conversation, every shared moment, every feeling that grew, all of that was choice. My choice to let you in. Your choice to stay. Our choice to build something real. But you put me in danger," Marina said, her voice breaking, "without even warning me what kind of world I was entering." "I know," he admitted, and there was raw pain in his voice. "And that is unforgivable. I should have told you everything from the beginning. I should have given you the chance to decide with all the information. But I was afraid, Marina. Afraid that if you knew all this, you would never give me a chance to really know you. And I wanted that chance so much." "Why?" Marina asked, tears flowing freely now. "Why me? Of all the people you could have chosen, why me?" Raphael touched her face with a delicacy that contrasted with all the hardness he showed the world. "Because when I saw you for the first time, I saw someone who was fighting the whole world to protect the one she loved. I saw courage and strength, and a refusal to give up even when everything was against you. And I recognized that because it was exactly what I was doing. You were the only person I thought could understand who I really am." Marina closed her eyes, feeling his words penetrate the defenses she had built. "I want to believe you," she whispered, "but I'm so afraid." "Me too," he admitted. "I'm afraid of losing you. I'm afraid my enemies will hurt you because of me. I'm afraid what we built isn't strong enough to survive all this darkness. But Marina, for the first time in my life, I'm willing to face all those fears, because you are worth it." They stood there in the middle of that room full of secrets and dangers, holding each other, as if they were the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. Marina didn't know what the future would bring. She didn't know if she could trust completely again. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She loved Rafael Albuquerque Brandão. She loved the imperfect, scared, lonely man who had hidden behind walls for so long that he had forgotten what it was like to live on the outside. "I need complete honesty from now on," she said finally, pulling away enough to look into his eyes. "No more secrets, no more omissions. If we are going to do this, if we are really going to try, I need to know everything." "Everything," Rafael promised. "Every detail, every name, every threat. You will know exactly what you are getting into. And if you decide it's too much, if you decide you want out, I will let you go." Marina shook her head. "I don't want out. I'm angry, I'm hurt, but I don't want out. I want to stay and fight. Not just for myself, but for us. For Julia. For this house that became a home. For everything we started to build." Rafael hugged her tight, burying his face in her hair. "I won't let anyone hurt you," he promised. "I swear by everything I am." "I know you won't," Marina replied. "But I'm also not going to stand by waiting to be protected. If we are going to face this, we face it together." When they left that room, something had changed between them. Marina's anger had not completely disappeared. The hurt still stung, but there was a deeper understanding now. There was the acceptance that neither of them was perfect, that both carried scars and fears, but that together perhaps they were strong enough to face whatever came. That night, Marina did not sleep in her room. She slept in Rafael's room in his arms, not because everything was resolved, but because she chose to be by his side, even in the middle of the storm. And when she woke up the next morning, with the sun coming through the windows and Rafael observing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache, she knew she had made the right choice. The battle was far from over. The enemies were still out there, planning, waiting. But Marina and Rafael were no longer facing it alone. They were together. And that, they discovered, made all the difference in the world. The reconciliation between Marina and Rafael did not bring peace. It brought clarity. And with that clarity came the awareness that the storm they had faced internally was just a prelude to what was to come from outside. Rafael kept his promise of total honesty. In the following days, he sat with Marina and detailed every aspect of the invisible war he had been waging for years. He explained how his father, Dom Augusto, had been a lawyer and businessman who refused to participate in corruption schemes that were common in São Paulo in previous decades, how he had denounced illegal practices, even when it meant making powerful enemies, how, eventually, those enemies had organized to destroy everything he had built. "When my father died, they thought it would be easy," Rafael explained one night. The two of them sitting in the locked room that Marina now knew well. "They thought I would be younger, more flexible, willing to negotiate. But I am not my father only in name. I am his in convictions." Marina held his hand as she listened. "And was that why they started attacking you?" "Yes. Lawsuits without merit. Attempts to stain my reputation. Clients being pressured to abandon me." Rafael pointed to some of the documents on the walls. "But I documented everything. Every move, every attack, every connection between them. I am building a case that, when presented, will expose their entire network of corruption." "That's why they fear you," Marina realized. "Not because you are cruel or implacable, but because you have the power to destroy them." Rafael nodded. "And they know I will eventually do it. The question was never if, but when. I was waiting to have enough evidence, irrefutable evidence, that no judge could ignore. And now, he looked at her, I am divided. Because every day I wait is one more day I put you at risk. Enrique has already revealed his true loyalty. The others know our marriage is real, and they will want to use that." As if summoned by the conversation, Rafael's phone rang. He answered, and Marina saw his expression harden. "I understand," he said, his voice icy. "Thank you for letting me know." When he hung up, he was as tense as a string about to snap. "What?" Marina asked. "Someone leaked information to the press." Rafael showed his cell phone where headlines were already appearing on gossip sites. "Famous lawyer secretly marries woman of humble origin, interest or true love." Rafael Brandão hides wife. What is behind the mysterious marriage? Marina felt her stomach churn. They are trying to separate us through public opinion. It's a classic move, Raphael said bitterly. Make you look like an opportunist, make me look like a fool. Create enough social pressure so that the marriage becomes unsustainable. What are we going to do? Raphael looked at her with determination. We go on the attack. It's time to stop just defending myself and start showing who they really are. In the following days, Raphael orchestrated a carefully planned counteroffensive. First, he and Marina gave an exclusive interview to a respected journalist, telling their story, obviously omitting the details about the threats and conspiracies, but being honest about how they met and how their relationship evolved from a practical agreement to true love. Marina was nervous during the interview, but Raphael held her hand throughout the process, a simple but powerful gesture that did not go unnoticed by the journalist or the cameras. When the story aired, the public reaction was surprisingly positive. People responded to the authenticity, to the vulnerability Marina showed when talking about her sick sister and the difficult choices she had to make. But the real bombshell Raphael saved for later. In a press conference called without prior warning, he presented evidence of at least 3 corruption schemes involving important public figures in São Paulo. He didn't reveal everything he had, not yet, but he showed enough to create an earthquake in the city's establishment. Augusto Ferreira, the construction businessman, was directly implicated in a bribery scheme involving public works. Roberto Mendes, the politician, had his connections to overpriced contracts exposed, and Enrique Castillo, Raphael's ex-partner, was revealed to have actively participated in a money laundering scheme. The reaction was explosive. The press went into a frenzy. Lawsuits were opened. And Raphael, who had been seen as a cold and implacable lawyer, was suddenly portrayed as a defender of justice, a man who had faced corruption even when it meant making powerful enemies. The truth about his reputation finally emerged. The stories of cruelty and coldness were revealed for what they really were: urban legends created by people who had reasons to fear him. Raphael wasn't implacable because he liked power. He was firm because he refused to bow to unjust pressure. He wasn't cold because he didn't have feelings. He was controlled because he knew that showing emotion in his world could be interpreted as weakness. Marina, now knowing the whole truth, saw with new eyes how people reacted to Raphael. At public events, she noticed it wasn't genuine fear she saw in people's eyes, but grudging respect mixed with guilt. The guilt of those who knew Raphael had reasons not to trust easily, that he had been betrayed and attacked so many times that he had every right to keep his guard up. One night, after a particularly tense event where they had to face hostile glares from some of the people implicated in Raphael's revelations, Marina and he returned home, exhausted. "Do you regret it?" she asked as they took off their shoes in the entrance. "Having involved me in all this?" Raphael pulled her into a hug, kissing her hair. "Never. You are the best thing that ever happened in my life, but I regret that you have to face all this because of me." "It's not because of you," Marina corrected. "It's for us and for doing what is right." But the pressures kept coming. Anonymous letters arrived at the house, some with veiled threats. Marina's car was scratched while parked in front of the hospital where Julia was receiving treatment. And there was a terrifying night when someone tried to break into the mansion. So Carlos and the security system managed to prevent it, but the incident left everyone shaken. Raphael reinforced security. He hired additional protection for Julia at the hospital. He installed extra cameras around the property. But Marina saw the weight it placed on him, the guilt he carried for having brought this situation into their lives. One afternoon, Marina found Raphael in his office, surrounded by papers, with an expression of exhaustion so deep that she felt her heart tighten. He looked at her and tried to smile, but the smile did not reach his eyes. "I'm tired, Marina, so tired of fighting." Marina walked to him and knelt beside his chair, holding his hands. "Then don't fight alone. Let me carry part of that weight." "You already carry too much," he protested. "Your sister, this whole situation." "Julia is fine," Marina said firmly. "Better than she's been in months. And as for this situation, it was my choice to stay, my choice to fight by your side. So stop trying to protect me from everything, and let me be your true partner." Raphael looked at her for a long moment, then pulled her into his lap, hugging her as if she were the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," Nothing, Marina said with a smile. You just had the luck that I needed help at the right time. They laughed, and for a moment all the weight of the world seemed lighter. But the situation was far from resolved. The people Raphael had exposed were not going to accept defeat silently. And one morning, when Marina woke up, she found Raphael on the phone with an expression she had never seen before. Pure fear. When he hung up, he was pale. "Marina," he said, his voice trembling almost imperceptibly. "They took Julia." Marina's world stopped. How? She was being transferred for an exam. The driver who transported her wasn't the usual one. Someone bribed. They took her. Raphael ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of total desperation. "They left a message. They want me to withdraw all charges, to hand over all the evidence, and then they'll return her." Marina felt nausea rising, but forced herself to stay calm. "Let's call the police." "We can't," Raphael said. "They said if we involve the police, they'll hurt her." Marina closed her eyes, fighting the panic. "So what do we do?" Raphael looked at her, and she saw the determination returning to his eyes. "We do what they don't expect. I have contacts, people who owe me favors. We are going to find her. But Marina, I need you to trust me, completely." "I do," she said without hesitation. "Bring my sister back." The following hours were the longest of Marina's life. Raphael made calls, activated contacts in places Marina didn't even know existed. He discovered that Julia was being held in an abandoned warehouse in the eastern zone of São Paulo, guarded by hired thugs. Raphael didn't call the formal police. He called something different, an ex-commissioner who had worked with his father, who now had a private security company. Together with Raphael's security team, they planned a quick and efficient rescue. Marina insisted on going along. Raphael tried to convince her otherwise, but she was inflexible. "She's my sister. I'm going to be there." The operation took place at dawn. Marina waited in an armored car while the security team invaded the warehouse. She heard shouts, movement, and then, finally, she saw Julia being carried out, scared but apparently unharmed. Marina ran to her, hugging her sister so hard that Julia complained she couldn't breathe. Sorry, Marina cried. "I shouldn't have let this happen." "It wasn't your fault, Marie," Julia said, also crying. "You saved me again." Raphael approached and Julia hugged him too. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." The police were involved after the rescue. The people responsible for the kidnapping were arrested, and the evidence collected during the kidnapping investigation ended up further strengthening Raphael's case against the corruption network. But the price had been high. The innocence Marina still carried, the hope that maybe they could live a normal life, had been definitively destroyed. She now fully understood the world Raphael lived in, a world where the people he fought were capable of anything. That night, after Julia was safe in a private hospital with reinforced security, Marina and Raphael finally were alone. They didn't speak for a long time, just held each other. "I almost lost you," Raphael finally said. "I almost lost both of you." "But you didn't," Marina replied. "We survived. We're going to survive all this." "I can't wait anymore," Raphael said with determination. "Tomorrow I'm going to present everything I have, all the evidence, all the connections, everything. I'm going to end this once and for all." "It's going to be dangerous," Marina said. "It is," he agreed, "but not as dangerous as continuing to live like this. And Marina, after this, after it all ends, I want to renew our vows. I want to marry you for real, not as an agreement, but as a choice, if you still want me." Marina looked at the man she had learned to love through all the storms, all the secrets, all the battles. "I will always want you," she said, "in any circumstance." "Then," Raphael said, "let's finish this war together." And Marina knew that whatever happened, they would face it together. Because what was between them now was no longer an agreement of convenience. It was love, real, deep, tested by fire, and proven true. The final storm was coming, but Marina and Raphael were ready to face it. And this time they were no longer fighting alone. The morning dawned clear over São Paulo, as if the sky itself knew that this would be a decisive day. Raphael had been in his office since 5 in the morning, reviewing for the last time every document, every piece of evidence, every connection he had meticulously built over years. Marina was with him, organizing papers, checking details, being the partner he needed. At 9 o'clock, they headed to the public prosecutor's office, escorted by security guards and a trusted lawyer of Raphael's. The formal presentation of evidence took hours. Raphael exposed with surgical precision each corruption scheme, each illegal connection, each criminal act committed by the people who had tried to destroy his family. There were documents proving the embezzlement of public funds, recordings of incriminating conversations, financial records that traced the path of the dirty money. Augusto Ferreira, the construction businessman, was linked directly to at least 15 fraudulent public contracts. Roberto Mendes, the politician, had his participation in an overpricing scheme completely exposed, and Enrique Castillo, who had betrayed Raphael's trust, was revealed as a central piece in a money laundering operation that moved millions. But Raphael didn't stop there. He also presented evidence of Julia's kidnapping, connecting it directly to the people he had denounced. He showed that they weren't just white-collar criminals, but people willing to use violence to protect their interests. The prosecutors remained silent for a long moment after Raphael finished. Then the chief prosecutor, a man with grey hair and a serious expression, stood up and extended his hand. "Dr. Brandão, this is one of the most complete cases I have ever seen presented. We will proceed with all the charges, and I want you to know, your father would be proud." Raphael shook his hand, and Marina saw something she rarely saw on her husband's face, pure, unrefined emotion. "Thank you," he said, his voice slightly husky. When they left the building, they were met by a crowd of journalists. The news had already leaked about the presentation of the evidence, and everyone wanted a statement. Raphael stood in front of the cameras, with Marina at his side, and made a statement that would be repeated on every news broadcast in the country that night. "For years I was portrayed as a cold, implacable, heartless man, and I accepted that reputation because I knew that as long as people feared me, maybe they would think twice before trying to destroy me. But the truth is that I was never cruel. I was just firm in defending the principles my father taught me, firm in not bowing to unjust pressure, and firm in protecting the people I love." He looked at Marina. "Today, I presented evidence against powerful people who thought they could operate above the law. People who threatened my family, who kidnapped my sister-in-law, who tried to destroy everything I consider sacred. But they didn't succeed, because they discovered something they underestimated. When you have someone by your side who believes in you, when you have true love sustaining every decision, you become invincible." Raphael's words echoed on every news channel, and public opinion, which was previously divided about him, turned completely. People began to understand that Raphael Albuquerque Brandão was not the villain they had painted, but a man who had fought against corruption even when it meant living under constant threat. In the days that followed, the arrests began. Augusto Ferreira was detained in his mansion in Alphaville. Roberto Mendes resigned from office before being formally charged, but would still face criminal prosecution. Enrique Castillo was arrested trying to flee the country, with suitcases full of cash and false documents. The corruption network that had haunted Raphael's life for so long was finally being dismantled, and he, for the first time in years, could breathe without looking over his shoulder. But there was something more important that Raphael needed to do. 2 weeks after the presentation of the evidence, when things began to settle down, he took Marina to a special place, a small chapel in Campos do Jordão, in the mountains of São Paulo, surrounded by peaks and pine trees far from the chaos of the city. Julia was there, finally recovered and with a radiant smile on her face. Dona Irene was there with tears in her eyes. So Carlos, Beatriz, and a few close friends of Raphael, who had remained loyal during all the difficult years. And there, under a crystal blue sky, Raphael and Marina renewed their vows. But they were no longer the vows of an agreement of convenience. They were vows of true love, tested and proven through storms. "Marina," Raphael said, holding her hands and looking straight into her eyes, "when I met you, I thought I was just making a practical choice, a solution to a problem, but you transformed my life in ways I never imagined possible. You brought light to a house that lived in shadows. You brought warmth to a heart that had forgotten how to feel, and you brought hope to a man who had given up believing he could have anything besides battles and loneliness. I love you, not as part of an agreement, not for convenience, but because you are the best person I know, and spending every day by your side is the greatest privilege of my life." Marina felt the tears flow freely. "Raphael," she began, her voice emotional, "when I agreed to marry you, I was desperate, scared, without options. I thought I was just choosing the least painful way to survive. But you gave me much more than stability or security. You gave me a true partnership. You saw me when I felt invisible. You respected me when others belittled me. And you loved me even when I didn't think I deserved to be loved. You are not the man the world thinks it knows. You are much better, kinder, more vulnerable, more human. And I love you exactly as you are, with all your flaws, all your fears, and all your strength." The priest, an elderly man who had baptized Raphael as a child, smiled. "By the powers vested in me, and by the love I see clearly between you, I declare you husband and wife." Again, but this time, for real. When Raphael kissed Marina, it was different from all the kisses they had shared before. It was a kiss of promise, of commitment, of a future built together not by necessity, but by choice. The reception was small and intimate, exactly as they wanted. Julia made an emotional toast, thanking Raphael for saving not only her life, but her sister's. Donna Irene confessed, through tears, that she didn't believe Raphael could find happiness, but was so grateful to be wrong. And so Carlos, normally reserved, said simply, "I've never seen the boy as alive as he is by your side, ma'am." When night fell, Marina and Raphael returned home, but not to the mansion in Jardim Europa. Raphael had bought a new house, smaller and cozier, in a quiet residential neighborhood. A place without memories of loneliness, without locked rooms full of secrets, without the weight of a history that had been painful for so long. "This is our new beginning," he said when he opened the door and carried her inside. "Our house, our life." Marina looked around the bright and welcoming space, so different from the cold and impeccable mansion where everything had begun. "It's perfect," she said. They spent the first night in their new home making plans. Plans for the future, for the family they wanted to build, for the trips they wanted to take now that they no longer lived under constant threat. Julia would move in with them as soon as she left the hospital, and Raphael was already arranging a full scholarship for her to study medicine, a dream she had mentioned but never dared to believe she could achieve. "You know she's going to call you brother, not brother-in-law," Marina said with a smile. "Good," Raphael replied, kissing her forehead, "because that's what I am, real family." In the months that followed, Marina and Raphael's life settled into a new and wonderfully normal routine. Raphael still worked as a lawyer, but now he chose his cases with more care, focusing on defending people who really needed his expertise, not on political battles or power games. Marina went back to school taking a psychology degree she had always wanted to do, but never had the opportunity. Julia recovered completely, the doctors declaring full remission. She moved into the new house and brought with her a young and cheerful energy that completed the home. The girl who had been so fragile now ran through the house, laughed loudly, and made ambitious plans for the future. Raphael's reputation changed completely. He was still respected, still recognized as one of the most brilliant lawyers in São Paulo, but now people saw him for who he really was, a man of principle who had faced corruption with courage, who had protected his family with ferocity, but who was also capable of tenderness, of love, of vulnerability. And Marina, who had entered that world as a desperate woman without options, now walked with her head held high. Not as Raphael Brandão's wife, but as Marina Brandão, a woman who had her own voice, her own dreams, her own strength. The two were true partners in everything. One night, 6 months after the new wedding, Marina and Raphael were on the balcony of their new house watching the stars. Julia had gone out with friends, and they had the house to themselves. "Do you regret it?" Raphael asked suddenly. "Everything you went through because of me?" Marina turned to look at him, genuinely surprised by the question. "Not for a second," she said. "Every difficult moment, every tear, every fear, all of it brought us here. And here is exactly where I want to be." Raphael pulled her into his arms. "You know I love you more than anything in this world, right?" "I know," Marina replied, kissing him softly. "And you know I love you the same way." They stood there, embraced under the starry sky. Two survivors who had found in each other not just salvation, but transformation. Raphael had learned that he didn't have to carry all the weights alone, that allowing himself to be vulnerable was not weakness, that true love was the most powerful force that existed. And Marina had learned that she deserved happiness, that she didn't have to settle for surviving when she could live fully, that her value was not in serving others, but in being exactly who she was. Months later, when Marina discovered she was pregnant, the joy she felt was multiplied by seeing the expression on Raphael's face. He, who had grown up alone after his father's death, would now have a real family. And when he placed his hand on her still flat belly and said, "It's going to be a girl, I know, I'm going to call her Augusta, in honor of my father," Marina saw tears in his eyes. "Our family is growing," she said, moved. "And it will keep growing," Raphael promised. "We're going to fill this house with love, with laughter, with life, everything it never had when I was growing up." The story of Marina and Raphael began with an agreement of convenience, with two desperate people seeking solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable. But it became something much greater. It became a story of courage, of transformation, of love that grows in the most unlikely places. Marina had agreed to marry to survive, but she found in the man everyone feared a love that made her truly live for the first time. And Raphael, who had spent years hiding behind walls of control and containment, discovered that letting someone in was not danger, it was liberation. Together they faced storms that would have destroyed weaker people. Together they defeated enemies who seemed invincible. And together they built not just a life, but a true home, full of love, of hope, and of infinite possibilities. Years later, when their daughter Augusta was already grown and Julia had graduated as a doctor, when the house was full of grandchildren and friends, Marina and Raphael still looked at each other the same way they looked at each other that first night in the library, with recognition, with love, with the absolute certainty that they had found in each other the place where they could finally belong. And when people asked about how they met, Marina would always smile and say, "It was an agreement that became the best decision of our lives." Because sometimes the most unlikely stories are the ones that have the most perfect endings. And love, when true, transforms even the